Hey, hey, hey! It's another AAA Wednesday session, which is Ask Alyssa Anything, where I'm responding to questions you left in the comments about the publishing industry or writing a stronger story. Thank you so much to my amazing community of more than 20,000 writers. I hope that these sessions are a small way for me to give back and speak more directly to some of your concerns. I'm really enjoying doing them, so please keep the engagement coming. Before we get started, please go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. It's a small thing, but it really does help my videos reach more viewers. And if you're new here and you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button to join this amazing community. I promise that you won't regret it. Let's dive into the first question today. If a writer wants to pitch a book to small publishers and no agent is required, what advice would you give them? First and foremost, I want you to make sure that this is a reputable publisher that doesn't require a literary agent and not a vanity press or hybrid publisher masquerading as a traditional publisher. So let's talk a little bit about how you spot the differences. If this publisher is requiring you to pay them for publishing services, that is not a traditional publisher. A traditional publisher pays you for the rights to publish your book, and they will handle all of the publicity and marketing and sales efforts for it. They'll also typically provide cover design and editing. So if a publisher asks you to submit to them, but they are requiring you to then pay for their services, that's a tricky position to be in because you want to make sure that those services are actually valuable. And there was a study that came out last year or so about hybrid publishers that operate with this model. And the study found that the vast majority of authors who went with these book deals or supposed book deals did not feel satisfied with the results of publishing with a hybrid publisher. I have another video that goes into a deeper dive into hybrid publishing and what that entails, so check that out if you are considering working with a publisher where you are paying them for services. So if you are pitching a publisher that is a traditional publisher in that they are going to pay you to publish your book and provide all of the necessary services, then I would go about pitching them a very similar way that you would pitch a literary agent. At the end of the day, the goal is the same: to pique either the agent or the editor at this publishing house's interest in reading the full manuscript, and then them ultimately loving the book so much that they want to publish it. So your pitch to this publisher should sound very similar or identical, really, to the plot blurb that you would put in your query letter for literary agents. Of course, any specific requirements that they have for submitting to them should also be followed to a T. The only other point I would raise here is that when you are getting into contract negotiations with this publisher, it would be very wise to work with someone with some legal experience, because that's really the role that your literary agent would provide for you. But now, since you're working externally from a literary agent, you need to make sure that all of the contract terms are standard and aren't hurting you on your own. So try to see if someone you know or someone in your network could maybe look over that contract before you sign it. Before we head into the next question, I wanted to let you know about a free resource I created specifically for my YouTube community. It is called my Story Self-Assessment Worksheet, and it's a fun, easy quiz designed to help you see your story from a new perspective and identify the strengths and weaknesses in it. Downloading that is also going to sign you up for my newsletter, where I publish exclusive interviews with publishing industry professionals and successfully published authors. And I'm telling you, they're giving some really amazing tips and insights that are beyond what I can provide on my channel, so I don't want you to miss out on any of that. And if you want to go straight to the newsletter, the link is also in the description. Here's the next question. What do you do when you've spent years writing and perfecting your debut novel only to be told that the market is too saturated with that content right now? I've put so much hard work into writing the story I want to tell, but apparently, while I took several years doing that, the fantasy market became too saturated. I didn't even realize too saturated was a thing with sci-fi and fantasy because I'm an avid reader and I've always wanted to read all the books, lol. The question boils down to, what do you do if you've written a book in a genre that the publishing industry is considering as too saturated right now? First, I would really challenge, as you did, the notion of a genre being too saturated. For instance, we've seen psychological thrillers being published year after year after year after year, dozens of them, to great success on many bestseller lists. So that is certainly a saturated market, but it's because readers are continually returning to the genre and want more and more of it. Personally, I think fantasy and sci-fi are always going to be around as genres that readers are gravitating to, so I don't see a situation in which agents and publishers would, as a whole, say, we're not publishing any more fantasy or sci-fi. That would really be unheard of to me. Honestly, if you heard from just one or even two literary agents that the market is oversaturated with your particular genre right now, I would still just keep querying. That's ultimately the opinion of those specific agents, and not necessarily the opinion of every agent out there, of which there are hundreds. And just because one agent doesn't want to tap into a genre that they think is too oversaturated doesn't mean that another agent actually loves your story, sees how it is different from others in the market, and wants to take it on. I would ultimately detach from the idea that you have to time your story to fit the market at any given moment. The truth is that a good story is a good story, and it's going to resonate with the right agent, publisher, and reader. That said, if you want to take a step away from your book for now, for any reason, go ahead and do that, and you can always work on a different project, even query a different project, and return to this novel that is in a genre that's oversaturated, and then see if maybe trends shift and it feels less saturated in a year or two. But honestly, I would really just keep querying it now. We have time for one more question today. At what point does historical fiction become contemporary? For example, is a book that takes place in the 70s historical or contemporary if it's written in 2023? There's no hard and fast rule for what year something becomes historical fiction versus contemporary fiction, but of course it's ever changing as the years go on, right? The general guideline that I understand is that anything taking place within the past 50 years is contemporary, and if it has taken place earlier than 50 years ago, then that would be considered historical. So today in 2023, that would mean anything from 1973 or earlier would be considered historical. I know that might feel strange for authors who lived through that time and it doesn't feel like historical fiction, but we are seeing some novels set in the 70s being presented as historical fiction. For instance, some people classify Daisy Jones and the Six as historical fiction, and that takes place in the 70s. The idea is just that the circumstances 50 years ago were different enough from our circumstances today to constitute being a different time period and thereby historical. But there certainly is gray area around that 70s, 80s, 60s period, so I wouldn't be so prescriptive with it if your novel doesn't necessarily feel like historical fiction but is set in a year in that time frame. Now, if it's significantly earlier than that, then it's definitely historical fiction. Thanks so much to anyone who submitted a question, and if you have something you'd like to ask, drop it in the comments here and it will be added to my queue. Before you head out, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button to help out my channel, hit that subscribe button to join this amazing community, and don't forget your free story self-assessment worksheet and my newsletter link in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and happy writing.